wonderful privilege of going through life with the living God as our God and others noticing that. That's what we see in Daniel and his three friends, particularly in these first three chapters. In chapter 6, Darius says of Daniel, he speaks of him as the God of Daniel. What a statement, the God of Daniel. And then he says, he is the living God. Chapter 6, verse 26. So what a great example to us that we can learn from about going through life in this world, a rebel world, in touch with the living God who gives us guidance and wisdom and strength and help as we live in fellowship with him going through this world. What a great example of living with the living God. In chapter 1, they're taken deported to Babylon, put into circumstances they didn't ask for. What a great thing that they have friends that are solid and spiritual, that fear the Lord. Do you have friends like that? You want friends like that you can build each other up. We're going to find that Daniel goes to his friends in time of crisis in chapter 2. They all unify in standing with the Lord and seeking the Lord. They encourage each other with the Lord and honoring the Lord. In chapter 1, verse 3, then the king told Ashpenaz, the king of his officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel including some of the royal family and of the nobles, youths in whom there was no impairment, who were good looking, this is the cream of the crop, suitable for instruction in every kind of expertise, endowed with understanding and discerning knowledge, and who had ability to serve in the king's court. They're going to be given the highest honor. And he ordered Ashpenaz to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans, the highest level of education being offered. The king also allotted for them a daily ration from the king's choice food and from the wine which he drank, and ordered that they be educated for 3 years. They're going to university, at the end of which they were to enter the king's personal service. What a great high calling they had, huh? Now among them from the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, names that all associate them with the Lord, with Elohim, with Yahweh. Then the commander of the officials assigned new names to them, names that didn't associate with the Lord. And to Daniel he assigned the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, and to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. But Daniel made up his mind. Daniel purposed in his heart. So there's all these external circumstances, but there was internal controls. Daniel made up his mind that he would not defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. So he sought permission from the commander of the officials that he might not defile himself. He's going to work with those in authority, but he has in view the ultimate authority, the Lord. Now God granted Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the commander of the officials. The Lord provides. As Daniel wants to honor the Lord provides. Or in the words of 1 Samuel, those who honor me, I will honor. And so the people of God through the years that have aligned with the Lord and obeyed him have found that he stands with them. Now in verse 17 it says, and as for these 4 youths, God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every kind of literature and expertise. So God granted, God gave. God's able to do that, isn't he? He's able to grant. He's able to give. Perhaps you're going to university and you need to make up your mind. You're going to learn a lot of things. You're going to cooperate with those in authority, but keep in view the ultimate authority and make sure you're honoring him and depending upon him. The culture pressures in on you. The surroundings even are intentionally seeking to conform you. In some ways they allure you, they attract you, they give opportunities for honor. Oh, how we want that. Opportunities for intelligence, how we want to be thought of as smart. Don't fall into that trap. Read 1 Corinthians 1. Opportunities for enjoyment, maybe the party scene, the social scene, that attracts us sometimes. Don't fall because of those things though. Opportunities for accomplishment, I mean the king's personal service. How we want to have a great job. We want to be recognized. We want to be accomplished. We want to have our name associated with some form of greatness. But Daniel didn't fall for that. He had in view the Lord. I'm here to do the Lord's purposes. And I'm not going to disobey the word of God and recognize false gods through the eating of this food that was evidently offered to idols. So he's going to honor God. He's devoted to obey what God says. I'm here to do God's will. That's the attitude we want to have. I'm here to do God's will. I fear the Lord. And I want to have friends that support me in that and encourage me in that. And the Lord shows himself faithful. Now, Daniel works with those in authority over him. He says, just try it for 10 days. How did Daniel get the patience to do that? He had confidence in God. He could be patiently firm. He's not going to defile himself, but he didn't kick and scream about it. He said, can we try this? And he had confidence that God was going to honor that. What a wonderful thing. Or in the words of Philippians 4, let your moderation, your gentle spirit be known to all men. The Lord is near. Go about life knowing that the Lord is near. The world does not know the Lord. I know the Lord. I want them to know the Lord through me, that they'd see the Lord through me. So honor God, displayed extensive attractions and opportunities, and others will see his goodness in me. Those who honor me, I will honor. Now, a year later, it's the second year of Nebuchadnezzar. So Daniel's a second-year student at university. We'd call it a sophomore, I suppose. And the king has a dream. None of his wise men, who all would have been instructors of Daniel and his friends, could interpret the dream. Well, they couldn't even tell the dream or the interpretation. In fact, they say to Nebuchadnezzar, this idea that we're supposed to even tell you what your dream is. Verse 10, the Chaldeans answered the king and said, there's no person on earth who could declare the matter to the king, because no great king or ruler has ever asked anything like this of any soothsayer, priest, sorcerer, or Chaldean. Moreover, the thing which the king demands is difficult, and there is no one else who could declare it to the king except gods, whose dwelling place is not with mortal flesh. So there it is. Gods, they're way far out there, but not the God of Daniel. The God of Daniel is the living God. The God of Daniel is near. The God of Daniel, Daniel knows. He talks to him. So when Daniel finds out about this, what's he going to do? Verse 17, Daniel went to his house and informed his friends. What a great thing that I have friends like that. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah about the matter. What are they going to do? They're going to freak out. No. So they might request compassion from the God of heaven concerning the secret. They're going to pray. They're going to talk to the Lord. That's what you do as you go through life with the living God. You talk to him. He's available. The Lord's near. Think of David's life. He knew the Lord. The Lord was near. He had all kinds of troubles in life, but the Lord was his God. Daniel, the Lord's his God. So they requested compassion of the God of heaven concerning the secret, so that Daniel and his friends would not be killed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel said, may the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. Wisdom belongs to him. Power belongs to him. It is he who changes the times and the periods. He removes kings and appoints kings. He's sovereign. He gives wisdom to wise men and knowledge to the people of understanding. Here Daniel's wiser than his instructors. His instructors don't know, but he knows, and it's because he communes with the God who knows everything. Psalm 119:99 says, I have more insight than all my teachers, for your testimonies are my meditation. I get instruction from the one who knows everything. In fact, verse 22, it is he who reveals the profound and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. And so he knows everything. And so we can be in touch with the God who knows everything. Wisdom is possible. Understanding is possible. I can depend upon the living God as my God. And so Daniel goes and communicates this to the king, but he's sure to point out, verse 30, as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me for any wisdom residing in me more than in any other living person. It's not that I'm smart. It's not that I'm super intelligent somehow. The Lord help us to realize we're not. Nobody is. The Lord alone is wise. And he'll share wisdom with those who are humble enough to accept it from him, humble enough to realize that they need it from him. Interesting that Nebuchadnezzar had this dream at this time and challenged his wise men at this time. His thoughts had turned to what's going to happen in the future. And God chose to give him this dream at this time because God had his servants in place. His servants in place who would seek him. Will you seek the Lord in situations that come along in your life so that then you could be a servant of the Lord? You could be used of the Lord in circumstances because you seek the Lord. That's what a person who knows the living God does. They pray. They're in touch with the Lord. And so Daniel and his friends' lives demonstrate the reality of God. the wise men said, well, the gods don't dwell among mortal flesh. And yet here's Daniel and his friends who know the God of heaven, the God who can reveal secrets. And Nebuchadnezzar says, verse 47, your God truly is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets, since you have been able to reveal this secret. And so may people see that kind of God as they see me. What do people think about my God? What's the impression that comes from my God, the God of fill in the blank with your name? Do you live in fellowship with God so that he can show himself through you to other people? Live in touch with the living God in a world that doesn't know him. And so we see him in chapter 1 honoring God, in chapter 2 seeking God with active dependence. Prayer is the character of godly people, of those who fear the Lord. Situations come, these were imposed upon them, they didn't ask for them, and they pray. That's what godly people do. They stay in touch with the Lord. And through it, others see that God is actually available. He's not like they thought of him way out there. No, God is actually available. Now, as we get to chapter 3, it's Daniel's friends, and they're facing imposed sin. They have to bow. Nebuchadnezzar set up an image and everyone's going to bow. And he set up a situation that said everyone's going to bow. But they do not bow. And they do not bow because they know the living God. And they've put their trust in him. Chapter 3, verse 28. They put their trust in him. Honor God, seek God, trust God. This is the character of those who know the living God and go through life with him. Let me read from chapter 3, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar the king made a statue of gold, the height of which was 60 cubits, 90 feet, and its width was 6 cubits, 9 feet. And he set it up in the plain of Dora, so it's in a plain so you can see it from a long ways away, in the province of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar the king also sent word to assemble the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the chief treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the administrators of the provinces, to come to the dedication of the statue that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Notice the long list of people. How intimidating this long list of people in authority that are all going to bow. And that statue, 90 feet tall, gold, what majesty of man, so imposing. And the repetition, Nebuchadnezzar the king set up. He'd set it up. Verse 3. Then the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the chief treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the administrators of the provinces were assembled for the dedication of the statue that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the statue that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the herald proclaimed loudly, to you the command is given, you peoples, nations, and populations of all languages, that at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe, and all kinds of musical instruments, you were to fall down and worship the golden statue that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. But whoever does not fall and worship shall immediately be thrown into the middle of a furnace of blazing fire. Therefore, as soon as all the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe, and all kinds of musical instruments, all the peoples, nations, and populations of all languages fell down and worshiped the golden statue that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. So such majesty, so imposing, such intimidation that's so forceful, everybody's bowing. Everyone agrees on this. Such an atmosphere, all kinds of music, and the repetition of that long list of instruments. Everything agrees. The atmosphere says bow, and everyone bows. And non-compliance, the punishment is so intimidating, so threatening. Immediately, a furnace of blazing fire. And so, when all the people hear it, all the people fall down, except 3. Wow. People of conviction, people of boldness in their God, bold as a lion, because they fear the Lord, they know the Lord. And so they're brought before the king, and the king is furious. Then Nebuchadnezzar, verse 13, in rage and anger gave orders to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then these men were brought before the king. Nebuchadnezzar began speaking and said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods, nor worship the golden statue that I've set up? Now, if you are ready, at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe, and all kinds of musical instruments, to fall down and worship the statue that I've made, very well. But if you do not worship, you will immediately be thrown in the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. And what God is there who can rescue you from my hands? He scoffs. What are they going to do? Not only the atmosphere is saying bow, but now the anger is saying bow, and is burning furiously like the fire behind him. The threat so intimidating, the scoffing, everyone looking at you. What are you going to do? Are you going to bow to man's false gods? Or are you going to stand with the living God, the true God? Their response is that they're going to stand. They know their God's able to deliver them. But if he chooses not to, they're going to leave that with him, because they practically lived in the sovereignty of God, a personal application of the sovereignty of God. It's up to him. He decides if he wants to deliver me. What a wonderful way to live, so dependent upon the living God. They say, Nebuchadnezzar, we're not in need of an answer to give you concerning this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to rescue us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods, nor worship the golden statue that you have set up. Beautiful. Leave it entirely with their God to decide in his sovereignty what he's going to do. It's not a question of his ability. It's just a question of his decision, and his decision is his decision. But our decision is settled. We're not going to bow. Nothing's changing there. What a wonderful thing. Are you a person of conviction? Would you stand like that, unwavering? May the Lord help us. How do we get that conviction? By knowing the Lord. The people who know their God will be strong. The living God. We trust in the living God. We've set our hope on a living God, like Paul says to Timothy. And so if you set your hope on the living God and live accordingly. Now God decides to allow them to be entirely under man's wrath, thrown into the fire, but he goes along with them. He accompanies them, and they're unaffected, so that the rulers plainly see that God was with them and that God's able to deliver them. It's up to God how he wants to work. But the way that he works this time is very much so that Nebuchadnezzar will come to this realization, the end of verse 29. There is no other God who is able to save in this way. And he calls him the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants who put their trust in him, verse 28. And so they have this privilege in a world that is dull to the living God to demonstrate the living God by putting their trust in him, by not acting like everybody else, by not falling in with the pressures around them. They trust God despite intimidating pressures. And others see that he's faithful through them. So may the Lord help me. May the Lord help you. May the Lord help me in this rebel world as we go through it to live in fellowship with the living God. There may be opportunities, there may be dangers, there may be pressures to sin. But in them, I want to live in fellowship with God. Lord, help me. Help me to honor you in practice, in my daily living, like Daniel did in chapter 1, so that I can display that you're reliable, you're a God who can be depended upon. Help me to seek you to provide whatever is needed. In the case of chapter 2, it's wisdom. But to seek you in prayer to provide whatever's needed so that I'll display that you're available. You're a God who's near, a God who's available. And help me to trust you in times of pressure so that I'll be able to display that you're a God who is able to do anything. So may the Lord bless you in going through life with the living God as your God.